Old terms with old friends. This is checklist number 229, brought to you by SecureMac. I'm your host, Ken Ray. Last week we talked about a slew of updates from Apple for iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and the Mac. New features, security fixes galore. Everything was awesome. So why did almost all of that stuff need another update 1 week later? August Trometer joins us to remind me what I've forgotten on this edition of the checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. Zero Day, WebKit, Integer Overflow. These are words that figured prominently into a lot of little updates issued by Apple earlier this week. 1 week after big, major updates for nearly every bit of AppleKit came a bunch of small, major updates for nearly every bit of AppleKit. Apple issued updates for iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, and the Mac, meant to fix 2 0 days tied to WebKit. Here to revisit a few definitions and help us understand what's going on is former checklist co-host August Trometer. So here's the thing about terms like this. I know probably back when you were doing this show on the regular, we talked about 0 days. I know we talked about WebKit. I know we've talked about all this stuff, and I'm reading the news this week, and I'm like, oh, 0 days, that's serious. And I'm like, yeah, what are those again? So why don't we just start there? What are 0 days?
It is serious. 0 days are exploits and bugs that have made it to the wild without anyone really knowing about it. So on the day, let's say an operating system is released, the hackers already sort of know about these bugs because they've had beta software to work with and things like that. And so they can get to work doing nasty, nasty things. And the company is usually caught flat-footed because they weren't aware of these things being out there. And the hackers are already exploiting these bugs. And so 0 days are very, very nasty.
All right. So help me out. Does 0 day indicate how serious it is or how little time they had to react? I mean, what is, like on a scale of, 0 to 0, what does the 0 stand for?
It is. It's how little time they had to react. A security researcher, for example, might be given access to the software ahead of time, where they go through their process of trying to find some of these bugs, and they approach the company and they say, "Hey, look, I found this bug, so here you need to fix it before you release things." Or maybe they find it on their own and they go to the company and they say, "Hey, I found this. I'm going to give you 30 days to do a release before I, announce it to the security world," which is never good for the company, but it's a whole lot better than a 0 day exploit where, people already know about this and people already have the software on their computers and are actively using it.
So the 0 days that Apple patched earlier this week, and fairly significant because it was just exactly 1 week before that Apple released updates for everything with, I counted it up, it was well over 100. I want to say it was about 150 security fixes across TV OS, Watch OS, iPad OS, iOS, and the Mac. So they'd already gone through and done this big, huge security thing. And then a week later, they're like, oh yeah, and these two are tied to WebKit. And again, I found myself going, yeah, WebKit, that's... Remind me.
Well, it's got the word web in it, so there's a big hint right there. It's an open source web browser engine that was developed by and maintained by Apple. It's used by a lot of companies. Google, in fact, took a part of it to create Chrome. Microsoft uses WebKit. BlackBerry, uses WebKit. Sony PlayStation actually uses WebKit on their PlayStation for any web viewing that people might do. So it's widely used, and it is a very fast, very efficient, and a very good browser engine.
So I was going to ask you, I was going to say I don't understand why this then is on everything, like down to my Apple Watch, but as you're talking, I'm remembering, well, of course, because my Apple Watch can access information on the web. I was sort of assuming that WebKit was a visual thing, but that's because I'm a dope, and I think about the web as being a visual thing. But, everything talks to the web, so WebKit would be part of just about everything that Apple makes. I mean, that's the reason that we all had to update all of our everything on Monday, right?
Oh, absolutely. WebKit is a part of Safari on the Mac. It's part of Safari on iOS. WebKit is in Mail to render any HTML emails. The App Store uses WebKit, and a whole lot of apps use WebKit. Not just Apple's, but a whole lot of third parties use WebKit within their apps, both on the Mac and on iOS.
I hope I'm not getting too far ahead of what you've actually, well, I'll just ask you. All the things that you were just talking about that use WebKit, the fact that Apple had these 2 0 days that they had to patch on all of their stuff, does that mean that Google now has these things that it has to worry about, and Sony has these things that it has to worry about, and BlackBerry has to update all 8 of the BlackBerry phones still out there? I mean, is this something that, does it affect WebKit across the board, or is it something that would affect the iOS, watchOS, basically Apple's version of WebKit?
I would say that it affects all versions of WebKit. Google might be exempt because they sort of forked WebKit into their own little thing, and so they may have their own changes, but it's hard to say. All of those other companies, I was wondering the same thing. What's their upgrade procedure for their software? Because WebKit's going to be repaired, so they have to reintegrate WebKit with their software and then re-release that software and get it out to people so that those exploits aren't taken advantage of.
So let's look at the 2 specific vulnerabilities addressed by Apple this week based on what they said in their notes. Because as you say, probably this is going to affect other people, but what we know for sure is what we know for sure. And that is what Apple has told us. They say that the vulnerabilities, well, one says a memory corruption issue was addressed with improved state management. The other one says an integer overflow was addressed with improved input validation. And I'm wondering if you could explain those to me, like I was a 10-year-old, and then please be prepared to explain them as if I were a 5-year-old. Start, if you would, with the memory corruption issue.
I'll try here. Memory corruption issues allow hackers to replace memory on or code in memory on your device with malicious code. And you can think about it sort of like this. Let's say you've got a hidden stash of cookies. Mm-hmm. And your little brother finds those cookies.
Oh, you mean cookies? I'm sorry, you mean cookies?
I mean like real cookies.
Okay, because we're talking technology. I thought you meant cookies. Okay, so
no, I'm talking the yummy kind.
Okay. So I've got a stack of Oreos, and my little brother knows where my Oreos are.
That's sort of the memory corruption part of it. And then when you're not looking, he dips those cookies in vinegar. And that's the hack. They look like your cookies, but when you eat them, big yuck.
Okay.
In the case of your computer, that big yuck might let a hacker access information on your device, wipe it clean, hold it for ransom, in the case of ransomware, or all kinds of other things that hackers do when they insert code onto your computer.
So I'm guessing here, and it's literally just a guess because it's been too long since we've talked about it. Improved state management means basically your computer can look at it and say, okay, it looks right, but it's not right. And I know this because I've taken a closer look. I mean, is that accurate, or can you tell us a bit more about the improved state management fix?
That's exactly what it is. Is there's, the OS has code that kind of monitors all of the memory, and it takes a look at it and it does various algorithms and checksums and those kind of things to make sure that it's supposed to be what it says it is, so that there isn't any corruption.
Okay. And then the other one, an integer overflow was addressed with improved input validation.
Yeah, it does something similar, but it takes advantage of a different vulnerability. Anytime you hear the word overflow in relation to a computer, it means that a section of memory has been given too much to remember, so it starts using other parts of memory. Sort of like a sink overflowing and then using the kitchen floor to store the excess water. Really, that's exactly what happens. And this allows the hacker to run his code, which, like the memory corruption, can do lots of really gnarly stuff.
Okay, so I understand then Apple saying, right, all you guys with iPhone 12s, all you guys with iPhone 11s running iOS 14, we need to make sure you're cool. All you people running Big Sur, we need to make sure you're cool. Apple actually came out and released updates all the way back to iOS 12. And I want to say they also released a Safari update for macOS Mojave and macOS Catalina, which is one or two operating systems back for the Mac. And I guess what I'm wondering is, what does this say about the severity of this, or does it say anything about the severity of it at all? Like, does this mean that it was being exploited so widely they have to go back that far? Or are they just, dotting their T's and crossing their I's and saying, right, we know there are lots of people who can't upgrade to the latest operating system. We want to make sure they've got the security fixes. I guess what I'm asking is, as far back as Apple is going with this, does that say anything about how severe this was, how widespread this was, or is trying to read into that as silly as trying to read into a WWDC invitation art?
I don't think you can say that just because they did that, it's widespread. Okay. I think it's probably more accurate to say that this vulnerability, or the two of them, have been around for a while. And, Apple just found out about it, and they want to fix all of the problems for all of the people still using their devices, so that, they don't want the heat for this. They don't want people coming to them going, hey, my device is locked and somebody's charging me a Bitcoin in order to get it back. They don't want anything like that. So they want everyone to upgrade and fix the problem so that they don't have to deal with that kind of stuff. And if I had to guess, I would say that they just recently discovered this, and it's been around for a while based on iOS 12 and all of the other OS releases.
So, how big a deal was all of this really? We'll weigh that in a moment, but first a word about MacScan 3 from SecureMac. Did you hear Apple's recent earnings call? Last quarter was the highest quarter for Mac revenue in the Mac's history. That's pretty impressive, but here's something even more impressive. Apple said once again that half the people buying Macs were new to the platform. You know what that means? Lots of new targets for bad guys. Protect your digital self with MacScan 3. MacScan 3 is a great defense against malicious software attacks aimed at your Mac. It's developed by SecureMac, trusted names in computer security and developers of exceptional security software for the Mac for over 20 years. MacScan 3 detects and removes Mac malware, catches keyloggers, removes tracking cookies, and provides full range or targeted scanning, all without crowding up your hard drive or slowing down your machine. Sign up for a free 30-day trial today at securemac.com/MacScan. Then once you decide to buy for less. You can take a little off your subscription to MacScan 3 with offer code CHECKLIST. Try it first. Watch it kick those tracking cookies to the curb. Then when you're ready to buy for less with offer code CHECKLIST at securemac.com/MacScan. Spending some time with our old friend August Trometer on this week's checklist. Just got a couple more questions about the vulnerability and the fixes from this week. In the notes, Apple says Apple is aware of a report that this issue may have been actively exploited. Okay. Does that mean this was being actively exploited? I understand why Apple wouldn't want to say, oh yeah, this is totally happening. But when Apple says, yeah, we've heard it might have been, I mean, should we really read that as, yeah, this is a thing that was going down?
I would. I would definitely read it as, oh, by the way, somebody out there is doing this. At least one bad actor is doing this. Mm-hmm. The one thing that they don't say is where it's being used and on what device. So it might be an Apple device. It might be a Windows device. It could be a lot of different devices that, this particular report refers to. But them getting this out there kind of protects all of their users.
That's really interesting. So my assumption was fixing it on everything means, there was a possibility that it was happening on everything. And I guess there is that possibility, but there's also the possibility that it was a tiny targeted thing even, but Apple's not going to say it's a tiny targeted thing. I'm guessing because they want people to take it seriously. And if Apple said, this is happening to Macs in Nigeria, then we'd be like, oh, well, what do I care? I mean, we wouldn't actually be proactive as far as the security stuff. I mean, do they not say where? And this might just be you guessing. I apologize. Do they not say where because they want everybody to take every security thing seriously as opposed to picking and choosing how to keep their machine safe?
It is me guessing, but I don't think, number one, that Apple wants to pick on anybody in particular. Mm-hmm. So if it's PlayStation devices that have reported the issue, they're not going to point that out because they want PlayStation to keep using WebKit. On top of that, they want people to take this seriously. So even if it doesn't affect Apple devices or hasn't affected Apple devices, they want people to upgrade to the latest security patches.
Yeah, I understand Apple wants us to do that. I can't remember, though, when it comes to updates like this. Where were you on that? I can't remember. You think, what was it again? Wait a month, ignore it, and hope the problem goes away? I can't remember. What's your advice for updating on security issues?
Just wait until you buy another computer. You'll be fine.
Okay, now tell people the real answer, please.
Keep your auto updates turned on. Really, auto update. Let it happen in the background. That way you never have to worry about it. And yeah, there have been reports of some people being burned by this, but the very small risk, and it is a very small risk, is completely outweighed by the rewards of just being able to sleep at night.
When you say there have been reports of people being burned by this, you're not talking about this time. You're talking historically.
Historically, yes. Yeah. When there's big updates, especially to the OS or some radical change, but security updates, those should just be, boom, do it right now. And if you don't have auto updates turned on, then at least please launch your Mac, hit update, and get that security patch.
It may interest you to know that since you and I have not been doing the show, so over the past few months especially, when an update comes out now, because I know this was a thing with you and me, but when an update comes out now, I actually, within 24 hours, sometimes within an hour of it actually coming out, I've been updating.
And have you lost your photos or anything like that?
I have lost nothing. No, I've lost nothing. So I think it turns out the only thing it takes for me to update regularly is for you to leave me alone about it. A wealth of information and a ton of fun. Thanks again to August Trometer for joining us today. If you're looking for more security news and how-tos, the place to look is SecureMac.com/checklist. There you'll find notes for all the shows that we've done, and you can listen to every show right there as well. It all starts in one place, SecureMac.com/checklist. If you like the checklist, will you tell friends about the show, please? And please leave a review of the show wherever you found it. And thanks. If you have a question you would like to ask or a topic you would like to hear us hit, our email address is checklist@securemac.com. That address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by SecureMac. And we'll talk to you next week.